right, welcome to the show, everybody. Good to see you again. I have my friend Derek Yorek here. Derek, my man, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Man, this is like an honor. I mean, I told you this. I've been like telling your story. I think there's got to be audiences all over the place. I think I've told your story, no exaggeration, 50 times in different
Oh, wow.
keynotes. So you're
That's
famous
hilarious.
in different areas you don't even realize. So,
Yeah,
so
that's awesome. I was very surprised to hear about that.
I love it, man. Well, I really do love your story, and I know the audience is like, "What story? What are we here to hear about?"
Right.
So let's start with that. Why don't you take us back? It was 2015. I'll set the stage. It was the Boston Marathon, and tell us kind of everything leading up to it. What kind of happened before? What happened during? And I know I'm going to pepper you with questions.
No, I'm all for it. We'll take a trip down memory lane, right? 2015, it doesn't seem that long ago to me, but man, that's 7 years ago now. That's a
Flies
while.
by.
Uh, yeah, so I got talked into doing a marathon. I never really wanted to run that far. I was a college runner, but the marathon distance it's hard, it's far. So I was never really like, I'm okay without it. I got talked into doing one. I was relatively successful, and I had qualified pretty well for the Boston Marathon.
Which is
And
hard to
everybody
do.
told,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's so
oh,
for
yeah.
the audience that hasn't run or doesn't know much about marathons. Boston is really, really hard to qualify for, right?
And that's what makes it kind of Boston, right? Is they set a standard. You got to run decently fast, right? So for the men, you're looking at sub 3:05. For a lot of years, it's sub 3 hours. So for a marathon, that's decently competitive, right? I mean, it's not elite, but it's hard to do. You're not just going to hop up off the couch and run under 3 hours for the marathon. So it's tough to do, and there's a lot behind it. There's such a huge history. It's the longest, the oldest, the best
Mm-hmm.
marathon in the world.
Yeah.
So it was pretty neat just to have had that, right, to have qualified.
Yeah. And that was it. So your
Um,
first marathon, you qualified with your time to
yeah, I
race
ran
them.
I ran 2:30 for my first marathon.
Wow, man, that's unreal. That is
Yeah, yeah.
unbelievable.
Um, it was a good day. I had to hang on. I fell apart at about 23. Um, but I was able to, hang on and ran decently well. Like I said, so I ran 2:30, and everybody was kind of like, you got to go do Boston. You got to do it. At least if it's the one time, you got to go do something in Boston. Um, and it struck a chord. I've been a runner my whole life. The Boston Marathon has so much to it. I wanted to go experience it just to be a part of it. And I'd qualified. So if for those that don't know, depending upon the time that you qualify, outside of the elites who get their own invitations, they put you in wave corrals, right? It's 48,000 people, give or take, that start the race. So they have to put you in particular corrals and waves and things like that. So that way people don't get trampled, and they do it according to your time. But my time was fast enough. I was wave one, corral one. I was going to be up start for those of us that are, the regular people. So we were going to get to start right behind the elites. And so that's kind of where, that whole thing of, man, that would be really funny. I'm going to be right there behind the elites. Uh, is that something I want to do? Do I want to go try to play with those guys for a little while? Right. I didn't know what I wanted to do because it's Boston. So I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to go have fun.
And these
Um,
elites are like, I mean, they're the best in the world, really, right? I mean, they're just,
Quite literally the
yeah.
best in the world. So most of the time, the Boston Marathon will be deeper than even the Olympic Games, because you can only have three Kenyans at the Olympic Games,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
you can have 12, and then the top Ethiopians, right? So all the top East Africans, the top runners in the world are at the Boston Marathon.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, pretty cool deal to be there. And so it was, my girls were 3 and 5 at the time, Aspen and Reese. And when I was telling them, hey, daddy's going to go run a race, my 5-year-old Aspen um, asked, like, can we see it? Are we going to be able to see you? I said, well, they're going to be on TV. And she was like, okay, well, which one will you be? Right? She doesn't know. There could be 4 people running. She doesn't know what the Boston Marathon is. But in my head, I was going, well, I think there's a way that I could possibly make that happen to make sure that you can see me. But that's going to hurt real bad. That means I'm going to have to hop out there and run close to, if not at the front, to make sure that she'll see me. So that's that's how the story goes. And you can plan things as much as you want to, but when it comes down to race day and how far are the elites in front of me, can I catch them? Because it turns out they're about 60 to 80 yards that they're going to start out in front of you. And so I got to the very front of my wave and corral and made sure I was real warmed up, and thought, okay, I'm gonna go for it. It was about 38 degrees. We had a headwinds the entire way, and it was raining, so it was horrible out. But I figured I'm here. We're going to just experience it. The gun goes off, and I thought, okay, I can catch the back of them. Well, there was a guy in a bright orange shirt off to my left that took off, and he was faster than me off the line. And I went, well, this guy's going to do the thing. He's going to hop out and try to lead it. So I was like, well, just keep running. And so we're running up the back of the elite pack, and he's probably 10 yards in front of me, and we're passing people. And I was like, well, I'm not going to race this guy to be in front, right? I'll just have to try to find a camera and wave at it. But he got about probably to 5th or 6th place, and then he ran out of steam. Either ran out of steam or decided that was too much spotlight. And if you know me very much, there's no such thing as that. I was going to take my shot. So I had plenty in the gas tank and kept moving forward. And then you get toward the front and away from the wave of people, and there are like dump trucks in front of the elite field with just reporters and cameras and just cars in front of you. So there's cameras all over the place in front of the Boston Marathon. So I had to take a half second to go, hey, is this something I really want to do? Right? Or am I going to hop in front of millions? And it took about that half second. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go up there. So then I put my foot down, accelerated a little bit, took the lead. It took me about 800 to 1,000 meters to finally get up there to the front. Once I hit the front, I had a thought go, okay, now my little girl can see me. However, I was like, they're going to go straight to commercial. They don't know who I am. I've got on a different bib color. They're going to ruin my deal. So I was like, okay, well, I guess that means I got to hang out for a little while. So,
and could you tell if the cameras were on? Could you tell if they were going to commercial? Would you even know or no?
I had no idea. Yeah. You wouldn't even know. I didn't even know if anybody saw it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to hang out as long as I can. And so we get to about 1.5 miles. I figured that it took them a couple of minutes, however long a commercial break is. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll hang out for 3 or 4 miles. The problem was that I had to accelerate hard enough to get into the front that I had started to pull a pack of like 5 or 6 elites away from the top Americans. So I was at that point, I never really wanted to mess with the elites race. I didn't want to have an impact. But I could feel that I was pulling a pack away. And so I thought, okay, so I didn't accelerate anymore. I just stayed right there. I was like, yeah, hang out for maybe another quarter mile to make sure that she saw you.
Yeah.
Um, and then I just peeled off at that point. So it was right about 2 miles that I peeled
Wow,
off to
man.
the side.
And at that point,
Um,
you felt pretty confident that Aspen, saw you, and Reese saw you on
right.
TV. You were up there
I
long
felt
enough.
pretty confident, but I
Yeah.
wasn't I wasn't sure of it. To be honest, I thought, well, maybe somebody caught it on YouTube and then maybe she'd be able to see it from that.
Yeah.
Um, at the time, I thought, okay, well, I'll just recover for a mile and maybe I can still put out a good effort. I did split 4:27 for that first mile.
Wow.
That is still the fastest first mile at Boston for the marathon.
Is that right?
Um,
Wow. That's
yeah, so
amazing.
they have Strava records and things like that for the
Hmm.
Boston Marathon, and
Hmm.
somebody has since run that portion of the road faster, but it's never been during the Boston Marathon.
Wow.
That's still the fast, and as well it should be because it took I held on for maybe 4 or 5 miles, still running a decent pace, and by the time I hit mile 12, I was like, oh, this is going to be a long it's going
Yeah.
to be a long day.
But so what was it like? I mean, you're running shoulder to shoulder with the best in the world. I mean, that is gotta feel. Did you take a moment to kind of be like, wow, this is like to be conscious of it and revel in the moment a little bit?
I did. Actually, when you say that, I get chills. I did. I took that moment to stay up there and just, what I really focused on was, uh, the American flags that were all out along the line, everybody cheering,
Mm.
right? What it meant to to be there, to run, to represent at that point, even for just a brief moment, but what it meant to be there in that moment and then to be with some of the best on earth, right? And I remember saying this in one of the interviews, but I'll never forget, they're so smooth, they're so efficient in all their movements, right? At no point were they I don't think any of them really thought that I was a threat, but nobody was going to let me go either, right? It was hey, we're here to do a job and we're going to be professional. But man, it was a really cool feeling to see what those guys do at the top of the game, right? I mean,
Mhm.
imagine taking just being the running back as Tom Brady takes a snap and being able to be there and see how he goes through his checks and progressions or whatever else, right?
Yeah.
I got to be there with Olympic medalists and obviously the eventual winner,
Yeah.
uh, and was in front of them. I mean that's ridiculous.
That's
So
amazing.
it was a cool deal, but I did take a moment to take
Yeah.
that in.
Did you talk to any of them afterwards or interact with them?
No, a few of the Americans I had trained with before.
Hmm.
I used to train in Alamosa, Colorado, which is a little running town. But there's quite a few of the American professionals that were up there, and a few foreign professionals that will go up and get some altitude training in. So I talked to them a little bit afterwards, and they were just like, "Dude, what are you doing?" But it's like, man, I'm having fun. I just
Yeah.
want to do, and enjoy my race time and
Yeah.
enjoy what I can do.
Yeah. And so how did the girls react when you got back and you saw them? So they weren't there, they were back. This was when you were living in Texas, is that right? Or
Yeah, so I was living in Texas, but they were when I made the trip, my mom and sister came out with me, right? They just wanted to come hang out, and they were there at the race. My wife and two daughters went to her parents' house, and they were in Kansas at the time, and so they had it on, and they got to see it. I was really curious to know what the reaction was. And so apparently my wife saw it live and yelled for the girls. They did go to commercial, so they had to wait a little bit and hope
yeah.
I was still there. I was still there. And by then, the announcers had to actually talk about me. So they had said my name and from Fort Worth, Texas. And
Wow.
they were like, well, we don't know what he's doing here, but We don't know who he is, but he's still there in front.
That's awesome.
And
I love that part of the story.
apparently the girls were there and they were like, "Hey, that's Daddy." And she goes, "Hey, that's Daddy." And then she left to go play. That was it. It was a very short. I did not do enough to hold her attention very long.
Yeah, but you know what? You know, for the rest of their life, they're gonna remember that their dad did something that nobody else would have done, and what a cool thing! What a cool story! I love that.
Yeah, it was cool to see, and then it was cool to get to get them involved, right?
Yeah,
It's just something that they can always have that, hey, that's something my dad did.
yeah. Well, it's interesting, and I talk about that. I use your story to talk about a few different things, but one is when it's amazing what you can do, what somebody can do when you have such a powerful why. I mean, it wasn't just going for a PR. It was really it was something about it was doing it for your girls, and it's like
Yeah.
that's so powerful. And I kind of get the impression that, listen, you were not, didn't matter how fast those guys were, you're going to figure out a way to get to the front, whether you had to run 427 or whatever it was, you were going to do it.
Right. Yeah, there was if that's something that could have an impact on them moving forward, right? It's not showing them, hey, you can get on TV. It's showing them that if you want something and if there's something that you want to be able to do, you can do it.
Hmm.
The you know you I had to do the training to qualify to get to that level, right? To be able to be at the front, to be able to get to those things, right? It's not just you show up and hope that you can do something.
Hmm.
There was some things on the back end, but hopefully, from then they could learn. If you put in work and you really hope and you just want to have fun with it, you can do what you want to do. And again, it's that, find your why, right? I tell my athletes a lot, find your why. Why did you do that? Find the motivation to be able to do something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and that was really the point of doing something like that, and to go enjoy yourself, right? Like that was, yeah, it was fun. It was something fun. It was kind of silly, I'll admit, but it was. I don't regret it, not for a second.
Wow.
Do I regret that day?
That's amazing.
And I don't regret if you're going to do something. A good friend of mine, his name's Carl Blackhurst, told me once, if you're going to be dumb, you better be tough. Well, if I was dumb enough to run a 427 first mile, I was tough enough to get through those last
Yeah.
those last 3 miles of that marathon.
I
It
can't
was
imagine. I mean, you're exerting a lot, and that's not the. I haven't run a marathon, but that's not the way you'd come out of into a race. So was that how hard
yeah,
was it to finish up?
that was really really tough. I mean, it was great. The Boston Marathon has a really really cool place about halfway through. It's where the Wellesley College is.
Hmm.
And it's just formerly it was just a women's college, but they call it it's just a tunnel that's a mile long of the Wellesley College girls just screaming at about halfway. And I was like, well, I gotta at least make it through that and not be falling apart, right?
Yeah.
And on the back end of that, I saw my mom and my sister, and so I got all amped up again. I told him, hey, I led the first mile, and my sister goes, oh, it's all over Facebook. You have no idea, but we'll tell you after. And I
Oh
was like, oh,
wow.
okay. So
That's
right around 15 or 16 miles is where things really started to hurt. So the last 10 miles were rough. It was tough, and that's where it gets really hilly as well. So
yeah.
the Newton Hills and Heartbreak Hill is a pretty famous. It
Yeah.
it did exactly that. It's pretty tough to keep getting through, especially at 38 degrees, raining.
Oh
Uh,
God.
I wanted to keep giving effort, right? I didn't just want to do that and then walk off. That's not fair to the race. That's not fair to the aura that is the Boston Marathon.
Hmm.
Um, if you're going to go do something like that, you got to be tough and finish out what you started. So I pushed through, and I ended up running 3:04, which is just fast enough to qualify for the next year.
That's
So
awesome, man.
um,
What is the most pain you've been in? Like, was that the end of that race,
Mhm.
or I know you've won half Ironman. I mean, I want to hear some of your
Yeah.
accomplishments for the audience for sure. But what was your most painful time? What was the time where you're like, wow, I don't know if I can do this?
I could tell you the exact race. Boston was close. I was real cold. But just finishing is one thing. The other one was my girls were, it was before that. My girls were a little bit younger. Reese may not even been born. I think it was just Aspen. But we had a triathlon in Houston, Texas, and they were giving a little bit of prize money. I think it was like $5,000 and like a wheel set or something. Um, Money was tight, right? If you're chasing your dreams of triathlon, being a professional triathlete, it's not like baseball, right? Where you're getting paychecks, you're getting paid. So money was super tight. Rent was going to be rough to even make. So I knew that if it was win or you know uh, look at the family, right? My wife and my daughter, and be like, hey, daddy can't provide.
Mm.
Um, and I got off the bike, and there was my wife and my daughter in a stroller. I think it was a 4 mile run. I was probably a minute back of first place. Um, and I was in about seventh, and they only paid top three.
Mm.
So I knew it was like, hey, you got to do something you've never done before, or you can't pay rent. Uh, and I promise you, that was the most pain I've ever been in. I ended up averaging 455 per mile, and I could not see the last mile. Uh, I had to just follow the orange blur that were the cones, but I couldn't see. I had run everything out of it. Ended up catching the leader with about a quarter mile to go, and we passed my wife and daughter one last time right about there, and that was kind of like, well, I'll die before I let anybody beat me at this point.
Wow.
And I won that race. We got to pay rent. I immediately sold the wheels for like half price on eBay, and we got groceries for the month.
Wow, man, that's amazing.
But
That gets me
that was the
choked up.
most pain.
Yeah, I can't imagine
That,
that. But
that
you
was a
just knew
dark
you were
place.
not gonna. You were just didn't matter what it took. You were gonna win.
Yeah, it was one of those that again, like I was losing vision. I couldn't feel the ends of my fingers.
Mm.
I was in a
Wow.
world of hurt. That one hurt real bad.
How were you losing vision? Like what was causing that? You're just so
So you just start locking
exhausted.
up
Yeah.
so much, and then you're what's happening is the blood is going to your heart so much that it can't keep pumping to everything. And so it starts just pulling in.
Hmm.
So it would just stop going to the ends of your fingers or stop going, right. Like your brain has to keep working, but you don't have to be able to see to be alive.
Yeah. That's a
So I was
some
probably, close to 200 heart rate.
wow.
That was everything that I had at that point.
And when you were done with that and you won, were you just collapse or what do you? I mean, how?
Yeah, I absolutely collapsed across the finish line. It's a euphoric, you did it, right? So I'm happy, but then all the pain really settles in. Like you can block out a certain amount.
Hmm.
I was pretty laser focused. You have that amount of time in that finish line, but that finish line just allows everything to just start flooding in. And
Hmm.
so I make a lot of weird faces and a lot of weird noises and rolled around on the ground, and everybody wanted to congratulate. And I was just, don't freaking touch me. Don't look at me. Don't breathe on me. Don't just like, I wanted to hug my wife and daughter, but I also needed a second. So I was like,
Yeah.
everybody go away and let me
Wow.
breathe for a second.
And how
Um,
long does it take to recover from that?
um, it took a little bit. I mean, I'm sure I tried to do something the next day, but I mean, I'm sure I wasn't right for the whole next week
Hmm.
following that.
Yeah.
Um, and it was yeah, but I mean, I would have done it again. I'm pretty sure I tore a calf muscle as well. So that was a little bit, but I
Wow.
mean, it's worth it.
All
You
right.
that's what you do those things for, right?
That's it. Yeah.
Who else who else can say those stories except for when you put yourself in that situation?
So, what does that do to you mentally now? Like when you've accomplished that much and you've overcome those types of obstacles, you've handled and overcome that much pain and difficulty and come out victorious. I mean, what does that do to you? Like, how do you approach everything else in your life? I mean, do you feel like invincible? I mean, you must feel like you can do anything.
Uh, Invincible, no, but can do anything? Yeah, probably. Yeah. There's more. That's why it's a great question, and that's one of the things it goes back to. I know we've talked about this before, but what's your purpose, right? And I always felt like my purpose was to let people know they're capable of more than they think. They're capable of more than they could ever imagine. I never thought I could go to a place like that. I thought maybe I could run that hard for a few minutes, right? But you don't know until you have that exact amount of pressure on you to perform that you have a baby girl looking up at you, literally helpless, saying, "Provide for me." You're gonna do things that you never thought possible.
Mm.
So now moving forward, it's it's not whether or not you can accomplish anything. It's should you, how would you go about it? The whole, oh, I can't do that. Well, that doesn't enter my mind anymore. Of course
Mm-hmm.
I can.
Mm-hmm.
I've done incredible things that I never should have been able to do. And it's nothing on me. I just happen to be, I'm gonna, quote, lucky enough to
Mm-hmm.
have been in those situations that I know you can push through anything. There's things that you can do to be better.
And my guess is that's not even just in physical stuff, it's all areas of life. I mean, I would imagine that
Correct.
type of confidence, knowing that you've done something that is so difficult. I mean, if you face a fear or a challenge or an obstacle that's immense, that's in another part of your life in business or something else, I'm imagining, can draw from these past experiences because you're wiring your brain to realize that, hey, there's nothing you can't handle.
Correct. And I'll give you an example of that, right? It wasn't too long ago. I kept thinking, well, the only thing I have to offer is physical. I can only run, I can do these things. And then what you learn from those experiences that no, I can teach, I can write, I can teach myself how to, you know, uh, read everything under the sun to learn. There's so much more. And I didn't even realize I was doing it to myself. I'm capable of more than doing things that are just running fast
Mm-hmm.
or just pushing myself hard physically, right? You can, uh, again, you can teach, you can start a business, you can learn how to finance, you can learn the computer that you need to do these things, right? Oh, I can't learn this thing. I don't know anything about computers. You can. It's just how can you break it down to the point of I just need to get to where find someone that knows how to do it to teach me in a way that I know how to learn
Mm-hmm.
and overcome that obstacle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you keep doing that over and over and over. I can do anything under the sun so long as I just take the time to work at it, find my reason why I want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and then keep going at it, right? You never quit with it.
Mm-hmm.
You can do anything you want to do.
Well, I love that, and that's such a great message. I think for listeners that may be thinking to themselves, "Wow, he's just at a whole different level." Like I can't even. They may not even be able to grasp, doing something at the level that you have. But the message is really that mentality applies to anything. It doesn't have to be doing a marathon or running a 4.5 minute mile. It's not anything to that level. It's small things that are
Correct.
stretching your comfort zone, that are challenges and overcoming that. And then you move on to the next thing and the next thing and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger from there.
Correct. It all starts small, and that's what I try to bring up when people talk about Boston. It's not like I just showed up off the couch and did something. There's years that went into that. There was a lot of training. There was, a lot behind it. I had to have some success to have the confidence to be able to do that, right?
Mhm.
But now you take from that, and there's no there's no room that I'm nervous to walk into, right? I've stepped out in front of millions of people. What is this person going to do or say to me that I haven't seen before, right?
Mhm.
But you draw from that. And again, I'm no different than anybody else, that I just happen to make those two connections, that it's a little thing every day. You get a little bit better at it, right? Again, it's hey, I want to write that first book. Well, great. Start practicing writing. Write a few sentences. Oh, let somebody else see what you did, help you out. And you keep moving from there. And it's man, it's a great thing. Then you get to meet other people that feel the same way, and that's the best thing on earth, right? Now look at me. I get to talk to somebody that talks to CEOs and tells people, right, what leadership is all about. I never thought in a million years I'd be able to do something like that.
Mhm.
And now look, now we get to talk to each other on and learning different things. It's one step, it's another.
I love it, man. Well, you are an absolute inspiration, and I love hearing your story firsthand. Ever since I read about you, I'm thinking I gotta talk to this guy, and so you've definitely given me a big thrill, and I know the audience too. I guarantee you this will be a very highly rated episode. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate all your time, and I thank you for your service. I know people that are listening can't see, but you are
Oh, right.
you're you're which most of the audience is listening, they don't see, but you are the holistic health and fitness state coordinator for the Arkansas Army National Guard. Which is excellent.
Correct.
How do you enjoy that? You must be right in your sweet spot there in terms of helping influence people in a really positive way, the way you live your life and helping them do the same.
I sure am. I'm lucky that it came along. I didn't join for this role, right? I got in at age 34, so that's a little bit later, and was just I enlisted. I chose to go that route, and served in the artillery. And then once this came up, a few people had heard about me. I did win the National Guard Marathon Championship, so some people knew that I knew a little bit about health and fitness, and they were like, "Hey, we thought you might fill this role pretty well." So, but to answer your question, yes, this is what I really love doing. It's I'm very lucky to be able to do it. Um, it at times there's things in the military and there's things obviously in the world that there's red tape sometimes, right? Not everybody understands those concepts very well. And coming in super late to the military, right? You kind of have to break down some of those barriers that people built in the military. And then I have to build up that trust that people have been doing this for 25 years, and I've only been doing it for 5 now. I have to build that trust and I have to earn that trust, so that they have to learn, hey, there's some things on the outside that we may be able to learn from. So yeah, teaching health and fitness is fantastic, but there's also growing opportunities on writing policy, on military budgeting, right? So things that I have to learn that I was definitely not an expert in. But again, we talked about that, right? There's nothing we can't do. So I open
That's
up a book and try to learn as much as I can.
You got it, man. Well, leadership is influence, and you're doing just that. And it's helping people do things that they wouldn't have been able to do without your help. So you're doing that as well. And just a great example of what leadership is really all about. And again, you're an inspiration. I got all the respect for you in the world. So I appreciate you, my friend. I appreciate you joining. I know we're out of our time here, but if people do want to engage with you or connect with you or whatnot, what's the best way
Yeah.
for them to do that? Is it LinkedIn or what other place?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. So we can tag those. But if you put Instagram, it's York Fit ish. Yeah, they hacked my Instagram account. So if you look up Derek York, it's probably not me. But outside of that, yeah, Facebook, LinkedIn, shoot me a message. I love helping anybody out any way that I can. And I just want to say thank you for what you do, teaching people how to lead correctly through inspiration, finding their why. Man, you're nailing it, and I'm honored to be even a part of that. So I really appreciate what you do for everybody.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that, and I got a feeling we'll be connecting a lot and talking a lot down the road. So, keep me
Hope
updated,
so.
and we'll keep the audience updated on all the things you're doing.
Sounds good. Hey, thanks a lot for having me.
You got it, Derek. And thanks all for joining today. We've been here with Derek York. Again, you heard his story, unbelievable. We'll have all his info in the show notes, links, and all that kind of good stuff. So be sure to check him out. Be sure to connect. As always, like, share, subscribe. Go down below. Give a 5-star review. This one deserves it for sure. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.